So I was not able to finish my last video about World War being the rise of Zion, and I want to finish it with this one. So there are two things that are going to come upon the world like it came upon Babylon. And as I said before, Isaiah 51 is a template of what's going to happen to the world, the cities of this world. And these two things came upon Judah and Jerusalem and Israel, but they will also now come upon the cities of this world. What are these two things? It is desolation and destruction is the first one. Famine and the sword is the second one. Now, having pointed this out, desolation and destruction, famine and the sword. Those are, desolation and destruction go hand in hand, which is one thing, and famine and the sword come together as one. That is the second one. So, this comes upon the world. So, in Jeremiah 51, it is talking about coming out of ancient Babylon. Jeremiah 51 verse 45. When you use King James Bible, you'll see that Jeremiah 51 is severe judgment against Babylon. And when you go down to 45, my people, go you out from the midst of her, and deliver everyone his soul from the fierce anger of Jehovah. Why? Because his fierce anger was on ancient Babylon. Now, verse 49, it says, just as Babylon has caused the slain of Israel to fall, so at Babylon shall fall the slain of all the earth. Now, so what he is saying is everything that ancient Babylon exacted upon Israel in those days, they were exactly the same thing to be exacted upon Babylon. So now, we have the new Babylon, and we will go there now. It would be in Revelation. Oh, come on. I got to type this in again. Revelation 18 and verse 4. This is clearly talking about the current modern day Babylon, which is all the nations of the earth, all the cities of the world. And of course there was one that the 10 toes destroyed. That was Constantinople. Now, verse 1. After these things I saw another angel come out of heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people. Who is my people? We just read it in Jeremiah 51, verse 45, Israel. So he's telling Israel to come out of the cities of this world. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, that ye not receive her plagues. What plagues? The 7 last plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Jehovah has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she has rewarded you. So once again, we see that this is a parallel with Jeremiah 51, that this modern day Babylon is to be done to it exactly as it has done to Israel. So who is a part of modern day Babylon? Every nation where Israel was driven into, according to the words of the prophets. Especially the ones who mistreated Israel. Because every nation who mistreated Israel, it must be done to them exactly as they did to Israel. We just read it in Jeremiah 51, and now we read it again. In Revelation 18 and verse 6, reward her just like she rewarded you, and double it. Double her punishment according to her works. In the cup which she has filled to her double. Now, here's what it says. How much she glorifies herself and lived deliciously, so that so much torment and sorrow give to her. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day. What plagues are they? Very similar to the ones in Jeremiah 51. Death, mourning, famine. We got that word famine again, lack of food. And shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is Jehovah Elohim who judges her. Okay. And to prove my point, the 7th vial. That's the finish. That's the finale. This is where all the nations, all the cities of the nations will fall. This is the Babylon the Great of the last days that he spoke of. The 7th angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was great earthquakes, such as not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. Now one must remember that this was a vision of John. So when these things are happening, the throne is actually going to be on the earth. But while John saw this vision, the throne obviously was still in heaven. Verse 19, there was a great, this is verse 18, and there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as not was since men were upon the earth. So the greatest earthquake of them all is going to be saved for the last. So mighty an earthquake and so great. Verse 19, and the great city was 3. Doesn't say divided into 3 parts. And the cities of the nations fell. So everybody glums onto the great city was divided into 3 parts, when it actually says the great city was 3. And they forget to read the cities of the nations fell. So this is the punishment of great Babylon. That's what it says in the next part of the sentence. And great Babylon came into remembrance before Elohim to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. So that cup that is going to be taken out of Israel's hand, going to be taken out of Judah and Jerusalem's hand, is going to be handed into the hand of the enemies of Israel, as we read in Jeremiah 51. Who are the enemies of Israel? Well, Jehovah calls them, plural, all Israel's enemies, Babylon the Great. So all the nations are going to drink out of this cup, and it's going to be destruction and desolation, famine and warfare. So, hunger. You see, folks, in the first world, so to speak, Europe, United States, Great Britain, Australia, Canada. This generation, Great Britain saw a little bit of it in World War II, but this generation has not seen famine. Not like the previous generation has. But this famine is going to be far worse. It's going to be exactly the kind of famine that the nations, that Rome did to Jerusalem when they besieged Jerusalem, when people had nothing to eat. So they had to eat each other. So this exact same plague is coming upon all the cities of this world. No food, no water, will be forced to eat each other. Desolation and destruction is coming upon all the cities of this world. The cities of this world is Babylon the Great. So, if you wonder why the preppers are out there stockpiling food, they know what's coming. Many of them don't know why they know what's coming, but they know what's coming. Is it going to save them? No, only Jehovah, the Holy One of Israel, can save them. But if they call upon Jehovah's name, when that day comes, he will save them. He said so. It is guaranteed. Joel 2. When that day comes, and he describes it from verse 28 through verse 31, how the verse 31, the signs in the sun and the moon, which are eclipses, there is no other way to interpret this. You cannot see, if it were to say the sun and the moon shall be turned into darkness, then you know that the plague of darkness is here. But this is not about the plague of darkness. This is a sign of the plagues to come. This is a sign of the wrath to come. Verse 31, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood. The moon is turned into blood and the sun into darkness. That is when shadows are cast upon the moon and the sun's light is blocked out by the moon. Before the great and terrible day of Jehovah come, verse 32, it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call upon the name of Jehovah, it does not say the Lord in Hebrew, it says Jehovah. Go look it up. The Lord can't save you. Jehovah is who can save you. So those who call upon the name of Jehovah shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and Jerusalem shall be deliverance. And as I have said so many times, that means there's no deliverance in Washington, D.C. There's no deliverance in Moscow, no deliverance in London, no deliverance in San Francisco, no deliverance in Rome, no deliverance in Salt Lake City, and no deliverance in the Himalayan mountains. Deliverance will be on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem. So, in order to be delivered, you have to go to Mount Zion, Jerusalem. As Jehovah has previously said, and in the remnant, that's the last generation of Israel, whom Jehovah shall call. And it's been written about many, many, many times. Jeremiah 39, the last part, goes to show exactly how he will deliver, or how his deliverance of Israel will cause them to finally believe. And at that time, he's going to pour out his Holy Spirit upon them. Here in Joel, and it's written in Jeremiah 39, and it's also written here in Joel 2. And it shall come to pass afterward, that's after the first trumpet begins to sound, that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. All what flesh? He's speaking to Joel, your sons, Joel. That's, since Joel was an Israelite, that's Israel's sons. And Israel's daughters shall prophesy, and Israel's old men shall dream dreams, and Israel's young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my Spirit. Jeremiah 39. Just for backup. No, not Jeremiah. Ezekiel 39. Verse 28, and they shall know. Then they shall know. Then and only then shall they know. After he saves them. That I am Jehovah their Elohim, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen, but I have gathered them into their own land. So after he gathers them into their own land, after he destroys their enemies, will they finally believe? Israel. Not until then. And you people out there who sit there and point the finger at Israel and who condemn Israel for unbelief, you condemn your own selves because you don't believe. Because if you did believe, you would believe this. That Jehovah is going to save all Israel, bring them into their own land, and then they shall know that he is Jehovah their Elohim, which caused them to be led into the captivity among the heathen. But I have gathered them into their own land and have left none of them there anymore. None. Zero. Not a stitch. Not even a drop of blood will be left there anymore. Neither will I hide my face anymore from them, from Israel, for I have poured out my Spirit upon who? The house of Israel, saith Jehovah. So let us understand what Joel 2 says. When he says that he is going to pour out his Spirit upon all flesh, your sons and your daughters, Joel, it means all the flesh of Israel. All of them. At that time. That is after he saves them from their enemies. He is going to pour out his Holy Spirit upon them. After he saves them from their enemies, Israel shall believe, and not until then. So, prepare yourselves for famine and destruction. It's coming. After the 7 sevens are finished, after the 77s are finished, of Daniel 9, it shall come. Famine and destruction. Paul said it was going to come upon the earth, upon the world as a snare. Quickly. Most will not see it coming. And while all this is going on, he's going to seek out those which were lost. In Ezekiel 34, starting in verse 11, for thus saith Jehovah Elohim, behold, I, even I, will both search my sheep and seek them out, as a shepherd seeks out his flock in the day that he is among his sheep that are scattered. What day is that when he's going to be among his sheep that are scattered? What day is it? In that cloudy and dark day. What is that cloudy and dark day? The day of Jehovah's wrath upon the Gentiles. And I will bring them out from among the Gentiles and gather them out from the nations, and will bring them into their own land and feed them upon the mountains of Israel by the rivers and all the inhabited cities of the country. I will feed them in a good pasture. Upon the high mountains of Israel shall their fold be. They shall lie down in a good fold, and in a fat pasture they shall feed upon the mountains of Israel. I will feed my flock, and I will cause them to lie down, saith Jehovah Elohim. I will seek that which was lost, and bring again that which was driven away, and will bind up that which was broken. I will strengthen that which was sick, but I will destroy the fat and the strong. I will feed them with judgment. So, folks, the fat and the strong are going to be, the fat and the strong of this world are going to be judged. And they will be fed with judgment, it says. So, once again, I say, prepare for lack of food. Prepare to be hungry and thirsty. It will be the new normal.